Before we begin, I'd like to talk about something briefly. If you don't want to listen and want to get to the main part of the video, please skip to the timestamp on the screen right now. These lore videos are my perspective and opinions on From Software's lore. I really don't know everything. I 100% appreciate that, I really do. If I'm unintentionally spreading misinformation, by all means, please let me know. My point is, I don't know everything, and that you should all take videos about From Software's lore with a grain of salt, as almost nothing is set in stone. Honestly, I don't watch many lore videos on YouTube for the simple fact that if I'm watching other lore videos, my brain's going to come up with the idea from the video, and my discoveries are going to be countered by what my brain's telling me is fact by other videos. So I like to keep my mind fresh so I can make my own discoveries and my own opinions, if that makes sense. Just so other people can get a fresh perspective on matters that have supposedly been solved a year ago at launch. Just so more people can have different options to make their own opinions. What I'm trying to say is, before getting angry in the comments, please understand these are my opinions and my discoveries based on the evidence I've found. They're not set in fact, just like every other lore video on YouTube. As a final thing on this matter, not all comments are like this, by all means. Most are absolutely lovely, and I'm so thankful and so grateful for all those lovely comments. But for the few that are, I just wanted to clarify. And as well, not all comments that are constructive criticism are bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just giving a bit of context to some of the people who've got more angry about it. In fact, I've had lovely conversations with people about bits I've messed up on, and I'm very grateful for that. Anyway, enough of me rambling, let's get to the video. A cult in the English dictionary is stated as a system of religious veneration and devotion directed towards a singular figure or object, and such a cult does indeed live in the lands between. Deep inside the mountains of Elden Ring lies a volcano, and within this volcano lies the volcano manor, home to the recursients and the blasphemous Rykard. You are invited to this manor by a woman named Rya, a perfectly normal person that is by no means different in any sort of way totally. She offers an invitation to said manor from the Lift of Rold. Even without the knowledge of what lurks within, it cuts an imposing picture, even more so when you see the massive and long tables lining the inner manor, suggesting that a multitude of people eat here. Only we or any of the recursients, if you decide to join, are never offered any food, and we never see anyone in our state eating there. And considering that we are lowborn and that we are never offered to eat here, suggests people of higher rank sat here and feasted. And considering what lies within the depth of the manor, I think it's highly possible a lot of lords and nobles came and ate but never returned, becoming the very thing they were devouring: food. But before we get into the gluttony of the volcano manor, we must first talk about its founder and his origins. Rykard, also known as the Lord of Blasphemy, wasn't always blasphemous. Once upon a time he was simply one of the 3 children born of Ranni of the Full Moon and Radhn of the Golden Order. And while I am sure he was treated very well, you see, Ranni's family, the Carians, were a matriarchy. A matriarchy is a group of people that are ruled by women instead of the traditional male in other parts of the lands between. This means that Ranni, the first and only female child, would be the one to inherit. We know that Radhn chose another path away from his mother's family, most likely at the fact that all attention was most likely on his sister, the heir, probably leading to a lot of resentment. Radhn started studying gravity sorcery and learning and becoming more a part of his father's family. Rykard, I imagine, was not an exception. All we know about Rykard prior to the shattering is that he was a praetor in charge of the Golden Order's law and married to a dancer named Tanith. And while that is hardly any information, as soon as the shattering occurs, an explosion of information occurs. Rykard, whether before or after the shattering, makes the volcano manor his home, holding on to a shard of destined death given by his sister Ranni. And after that, once the shattering's bloody war started, he, like his siblings and family, fought each other for the shards of the Elden Ring. But of course he couldn't do this by himself, so he invited many soldiers to his side, building a great army of the volcano manor. This army was massive, consisting of massive trolls and battle-hardened soldiers. This army had bigger intentions than just the shards though. But that all fell apart once Rykard began delving into his home's history. It turns out a long time ago, before the Golden Order, and most likely even before the dragon's reign, there existed a civilization based in his volcano. This civilization worshipped a great serpent deity, and as he spiraled more and more into madness, he communed with the great serpent, whose statues littered the manor and its surrounding areas. The great serpent deity used its great forked tongue to whisper honey in the praetor's ears, whispering great power, and great power he received. The consequences though? Well, the consequences and conditions were that Rykard must fuse with the great serpent, and fuse he did, becoming more serpent than man, allowing himself to be eaten whole. The serpent kept telling Rykard how they could destroy the very gods together. This is a line that clicked a lot in place. Destroy the very gods? How did they plan to do that? It wasn't until Vati's newest video that I realised. In Vati's newest lore video, he talks of how the scarlet rot outer god shows itself to mortals by taking the form of a giant scorpion. This allows the frail minds of mortals to perceive it. Now from all this it clicked in my head. The fell god represents and manifests itself as though an eye in the middle of the giants and their descendants' abdomens. The scarlet rot outer god is a giant scorpion. The moon outer god is the moon and the stars. The formless mother as a stomach that can be plunged into to create blood incantations. And finally the unknown outer god that is the great serpent. So do you see? The great serpent isn't just any other deity. It is, in my opinion, an outer god. This is further proven by the fact that once Rykard and the great serpent fused, it birthed a new species, man-serpents, a whole new race along with the rebirth of fire sorceries long lost. Something that is very similar to another being who also merged with an outer god, Marika the Eternal. The Elden Ring was of the greater will, made by the greater will, and it merged with Marika once it was sent down to the lands between in the hands of its vassal. And once they merged, grace was born, a whole new thing brought into the world by merging, exactly like the man-serpents. You might also be saying, well, the Elden Ring isn't sentient, so it doesn't count. But how do you know that? Now think, where did Radhn come from? It's never specifically stated, no mention of his origin or him as a child. But what if that's because he was never a child? We know he's Marika's other half. What if this is more literal than originally thought? What if Radhn is actually the Elden Ring? It just makes so much sense. One of Elden Ring's biggest mysteries is how did Radhn become Marika's other half? Well, here it was, right in front of us. Radhn is the Elden Ring, and he became Marika's other half after fusing with her, just like how Rykard's other half is the great serpent outer god after fusing with it. This even adds context as to why he left Rennala. No matter how much he loved her, he was born to serve the Golden Order and the Greater Will. He had no choice. He loved her, and she loved him. But sometimes duty is the death of love. This also means that Radhn is as close to a child of the Greater Will as anyone is ever going to be. Meaning that all of Radhn and Marika's children are grandchildren of the Greater Will. And this makes even more sense when you consider that all of Radhn and Marika's children are Emperyans. This further proves the theory that the gloam-eyed Queen and Ranni are actually their children as well. While all of the children are merely demigods, not fully gods but still half, due to the fact that Radhn and Marika fused. Perhaps this is why they married. They realised they couldn't produce an Emperyan apart. This means that if somehow the Great Serpent and Rykard reproduced, they would birth Emperyans. The reason they haven't? I assume because of his wife Tanith, who he is evidently still very loyal to, as is her. Tanith was low-born, she wasn't high-born, so the fact that he married her really implicates that he did love her, or else he would have picked a more politically suited match. Going on to Tanith, after her husband Rykard was labelled blasphemous, and their soldiers began to look at their former praetor in scorn for his actions, by the looks of it, she fed them to the Lord of Blasphemy. This strengthened him, he grew stronger from his sacrifices, so Tanith most likely had an idea. If this strengthens husband dearest, why stop now? Only, this was the beginning of the end. It wouldn't happen for a while, but this doomed their cause. But from this mistake, the recursants were born. In the words of most, vile tarnished who hunted their own kin, a cult in every way. They followed their leader Tanith, who whispered lies into their ears about the dogmatic Golden Order and how they would destroy it. This, of course, in true From Software fashion, is a trick of the light. The whole point of this cult was to cultivate, and so they cultivated and cultivated, watering the proverbial plant until it fully grew, and then they reaped their rewards, feeding their Lord of Blasphemy nourishment of the highest degree. Tarnished, yummy. We were never going to destroy the dogmatic Golden Order, but Rykard might have. I think the reason we and previous times were used instead of mass feeding useless soldiers because these weak souls bloated Rykard. When we are eventually summoned to meet Rykard, he is slow and bloated, and judging by the piles upon piles of corpses littering the cavern he resides in, that is the reason for his bloated demeanour. Not to mention the enormous cages hanging in the background. What if beasts like tree spirits were once in there, ready to be eaten whole? Either way, Rykard, the Lord of Blasphemy, like a lot of things in the lands between, is far beyond his prime when we meet him, fat and bloated and slow. And with the help of a previous victim, we find the Serpent Hunter spear and slay the Serpent King and the Serpent family he wished to introduce us to. And all is happily ever after, or so you're made to believe. If you return to the boss arena, you will find Tanith feasting on the giant brain of Rykard, which surprisingly still writhes, evidently still very much alive, which really shouldn't be surprising considering Rykard's counterpart, Marika and Radhn, still live, even as they crumble with many limbs missing like Rykard, and have been very clearly killed by us. Tanith, from her dialogue, we know that she is trying to fuse herself with Rykard, and by proxy the Serpent Outer God, to bring her beloved back to his full strength. No matter how much evil she has committed, her dialogue is no less heart-wrenching and sad. But these weren't the only atrocious acts committed inside this cursed manor. There were also the Albinaurics. Deep in the depths of the manor, Albinaurics lie, tortured to the insanity, screaming at the top of their lungs. What Rykard was doing to them and why is left up to your imagination, but I suspect it wasn't just malicious glee, torturing innocents. I imagine this was some kind of experiment, for what I don't know, but we can find the Dung Eater's work in these depths. Perhaps this wasn't actually done by Rykard, but by the Dung Eater. Obviously it would have to have been ordered by Rykard or Tanith, meaning that maybe the Dung Eater was once a recursant, and that makes a lot of sense given the Dung Eater's glee at violence. I am sure he would jump at the opportunity to justify killing Tarnished over and over again, though justification has never been a problem for the Dung Eater per se. Then again, this could have been Rykard's work, as we have no idea the effect such a transformation had on his psyche. Maybe a new bloodlust arose courtesy of his Great Serpent. On another note towards the Great Serpent, we don't actually know how much of the Great Serpent's consciousness still lives inside Rykard. It seems a lot of the time that it's all Rykard, but how true that is, we don't know, because sadly we don't have any information on it. Which, let me say, is super frustrating. It's most likely theorized that DLC is going to be about Miquella, but fingers crossed we might get some kind of information. Maybe a recursant made his way into Miquella's dream, if that's the way it is. I don't know, I'm just reaching, but I just hope we get some more information in the DLC, because there is a lot of loose ends in Elden Ring. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. I really hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. On the screen there should be some more lore videos by us. I think we've got something like 33 now, which is insane. I also just wanted to say before we go, thank you so much for 735 subscribers. It means the absolute world to me, and I can't thank you all enough. A lot of your comments are just so heartwarming, and just thank you so much. I know it's been a bit of time since I last uploaded, but I've just been so busy. But there's an upload now, and I really did hope that it was enjoyable. Right, enough of me rambling. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and may you all find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.